to work. This is just a different opportunity for them to make money by
What we
working
doing?
and using their own name, image, and likeness, whether it's signing autographs, whether it's doing commercials or ads for some company or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with that. And I told our players when this whole thing started to get agents, get representation, and so you create opportunities for yourself. And our players last year created $3 million worth of opportunity for themselves by doing it the right way. And I have no problem with that, and nobody had a problem on our team with that because the guys that got the money earned it. Now, there were only 25 guys on our team that had the opportunity to earn money. The issue and the problem with name, image, and likeness is coaches trying to create an advantage for themselves. I went out and said, okay, how could we use this to our advantage? They created what's called a collective. All right, a collective is an outside marketing agency that's not tied to the university, that's funded by alumni from the university. And they give this collective millions of dollars. And that marketing agency then funnels it to the players. All right, and the coach actually knows how much money's in the collective, so he knows how much he can promise every player. That's not what name, image, and likeness was supposed to be. That's what it's become, and that's the problem in college athletics right now. And now every player is saying, well, what am I going to get? Well, my philosophy is my job is to create a platform for our players to create value for themselves and their future by becoming better people, by graduating from school and developing a career off the field, and by seeing if they can develop a career on the field and play at the next level in the NFL. Our players have made $1.7 billion in the NFL since 2010. All right, so we've created a lot of opportunity. We also have one of the highest graduation rates, in college athletics. We have the most guys that graduate inside of 4 years. So we've done a good job of that. But now in recruiting, we have players in our state that grew up wanting to come to Alabama that they won't commit to us unless we say we're going to give them what somebody else is going to give them. And my theory on that is everything that we've done in college athletics has always been equal. Your scholarship is equal. They get equal Alston money. They get equal cost of attendance. They get equal academic support. They get equal medical attention. Everything has always been equal. So I told our players, I said, we're going to have a collective, but everybody's going to get the same amount of opportunity from that collective. Now, you can go earn however much you want. And I tell the recruits the same thing, because our job is not to buy you to come to school here. And I don't know how you manage your locker room, and I don't know if this is a sustainable model, because one of you folks are going to give some player that comes to our school a bunch of money to come to our school. And then you're going to come to the game in full strut, thinking, I'm going to tell everybody I got that guy to come to Alabama. And then he's not going to play, and he's going to transfer, and you're going to say, I'm never going to do this again. All right, so I don't know how it works. I don't know how you sustain a model like that. Now, I know that we're going to lose recruits because somebody else is going to be willing to pay them more. But name, image, and likeness is something that's here. And I think the more supporters that we have for the University of Alabama in all sports that are willing to sponsor players, whatever you want to call it, use them in your business to help your business, that's going to help our programs. The thing that I fear is at some point in time, they're just going to say we're going to have to pay players. If we start paying players, we're going to have to eliminate sports. All right, and this is all bad for college sports. I mean, we probably have, 450 people on scholarship at Alabama, whether they're women's tennis players, women's softball players, golfers, baseball players, non-revenue sports that have for years and years and years been able to create a better life for themselves because they've been able to get scholarships and participate in college athletics. That's what college athletics is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be something where people come and make money. And you make a decision about where you go to school based on how much money you're going to make. You should make a decision based on where you have the best chance to develop as a person, as a student, and as a player, which is what we've always tried to major in. And we're going to continue to do that. And hopefully there's enough people out there that want to do it. But I know the consequence is going to be difficult for the people who are spending tons of money to get players. And you've read about them. You know who they are. I mean, we were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it. Yep. So it's tough, and people blame the NCAA. But in defense of the NCAA, we are where we are because of the litigation that the NCAA gets, like the transfer portal. Every time somebody wanted to transfer, they'd apply for a waiver. If you didn't give them, the NCAA didn't give them a waiver so they could be immediately eligible, they filed suit. So the NCAA would back off and give them a waiver. So they just said, we're just going to make a rule where everybody can transfer. That's how that happened. So if the NCAA doesn't get some protection from litigation, whether we got to get an antitrust or whatever it is from a federal government.
Alabama?
Yes, I would. First of all, I'll say it's a shame that we have to do this. It's really despicable. It's despicable that somebody can say things about somebody and an organization. More importantly, 17-year-old kids. You're taking shots at 17-year-old kids and their families. And if they broke state laws, they're all money. We bought every player on this group. We never bought anybody. No rules were broken. Nothing was done wrong. It was all in the way we do things, the ethics in which we do things. And these families, it's despicable that a reputable head coach could come out and say this when he doesn't get his way or things don't go his way. The narcissist in him doesn't allow those things to happen. And it's ridiculous. But when he's not on top, and the parity in college football he's been talking about, go talk to coaches who coach for him. You'll find out all the parity. Go dig into wherever he's been. You can find out anything. And it's a shame that you got to sit here and defend 17-year-old kids and families. And Texas A&M, because we do things right, we're always going to do things right. But we're always going to be here. We're doing a heck of a job. These coaches have done a great job. Our players have done a great job. The whole organization of recruiting people. It's despicable that we got to sit here at this level of ball and say these things to defend the people of this organization, the kids, 17-year-old kids and their families. It's amazing. Some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. Go dig into his past or anybody that's ever coached with him. You can find out anything you want to find out, what he does and how he does it. And it's despicable. It really is. And it's a shame we have to sit up here and have this conversation about things we do. And it's personal to us? Yes, it is. It's personal to A&M. It's personal to our players. It's personal to our coaches and everybody involved. And I know the guy. Know him really well. It's amazing that we're allowed to do those things. It's really despicable. And I hate it. For our players who are coming here, who did things the right way, have done things the right way, and will continue to do things the right way, I apologize to you that people insult you publicly the way they're doing it. And our fans, I apologize to you guys for people saying those things about Texas A&M. I promise you this, there are no violations. There are nothing wrong. It's the second time we've had to do this with grown men who don't get their way and want to pout, throw a fit, and act up. Just go ask all the people who work for him. You know exactly what he's about. I always said this. My dad always told me this. When people show you who they are, believe them. He's showing you who he is.
Questions? To the left, Olin.
He stumped him. He stumped him. He stumped him. Nice block. Wow. Great penetration. Surge through the middle of that. Michigan State first and goal. Yeah. Outstanding play.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching Inside the Locker Room. I am your co-host, Brian Musalam, alongside my co-host, the Honorable Jason Strayhorn. And in studio with me is our co-host, Justin Thin. Justin, how you doing? Jason, how you guys doing?
Good to be back. Thanks for having me, guys.
Jason, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. How you guys doing?
We're fantastic. We got a little fireworks going on this week about NIL and, Coach spatting out with, we had Coach on a couple last week, and we got a little spat going on. What do you make of that, Jason?
Well, it's a little hot in the kitchen, Brian. You know, when you look at the comments, the inflammatory comments that were returned by Jimbo Fisher, in my opinion, it looked like, to me, you had Coach Saban appealing to his donor base and trying to get them on board with, hey, this is the way the world is shifting. And in doing so, there was a bit of a dry snitch. You know, by that I mean that he called out
a dry snitch.
Yeah, it was a little bit of that. I mean, that's what Jimbo, that's how he took it. That's how Deion took that as well.
Wow.
But I think ultimately when they reviewed the tape, when you review the tape, you see
The tape don't lie, Jason.
The eye in the sky don't lie.
No,
People
doesn't.
do. Tape doesn't.
Doesn't lie, but I'm just curious, Justin, when you saw Saban's take of that, and then Jimbo's response, because as we know in the recruiting world, that you just don't badmouth Nick Saban, you don't say those things. Obviously, there's been, blood and stuff boiling over time. The Athletic wrote an article about it. It was very interesting.
Yep.
What's your take on all that, Justin?
So when Coach Saban first said what he said, which was the night before Jimbo Fisher's press conference, I kind of understood where he was coming from in terms of who his audience was. So Coach Saban was, I want to say, in Birmingham, Alabama, talking to donors at a dinner, and he was there. Basketball coach Nate Oates was there. And basically his intention there with his comments was to light a fire under his donors, kind of try to get them to step up their bag game, and really just kind of inspire them to look at what Texas A&M is doing. We kind of need to do the same. Now, in doing so, he didn't need to necessarily say the wording that he said, because obviously Jimbo Fisher then has to go ahead and stick up for his players. Of course he does. But
And for Jimbo, of course he does.
Right, yeah. But so I guess basically what I would say is I can see the purpose behind what Coach Saban was saying, but I also kind of see why Jimbo had to respond. But I don't think a 10-minute and 8-second press conference was still warranted with those kind of personal attacks. But, hey, we love it. Good content for us.
I think
Who's the narcissist here?
Jimbo.
Hold on. Who? Say it again.
Wait.
I think
This
it's
guy,
Jimbo.
the guy right there. This guy. or that guy.
Here's what I mean. I know we talk about him talking to his donor base and trying to educate them and saying, hey, I'm not necessarily convinced that was the ploy. I'm convinced that Nick was beaten, right? He came number 2 instead of number 1. He's got enough donors, enough resources over there. And maybe it was to light a fire under his donor base, but, that was calculated. I mean, that was directed at Jimbo. That was directed at Deion, at Prime. And, there is something about Nick Saban that's, as we all know, he doesn't like to finish number 2. Doesn't like to finish number 2.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't like to finish number 2. I agree with that, but I think that to come in second place in recruiting when he did not, quote unquote, buy any players, and I know that to be pretty true. I do know some players that signed with Alabama who did not receive a dime in NIL as of yet in their freshmen, guys who enrolled early at Alabama. And some of their family members are a little bit disgruntled because they've heard now through the grapevine how other kids in the same class have been compensated. I don't know if these are deals that were worked out before, but we all know, like, how could they not be, when you look at NIL, and we're going to dive into that a little bit later. But at Alabama, they have really done it the way of the intention of NIL, and that is to get agents. That's what Nick Saban said. And I told my team to get agents and go market yourself. Only 25 guys out of his 85 scholarships participate. So, hey, they were trying to do things the way in the spirit of the law, but, now, as you know, it's the wild, wild west. People are going to go right up to the line and maybe straddle that line in order to get the players they need to win championships.
Personally, I think the way that Jimbo should have handled it, especially, I don't put any stock in the NCAA's little hollow guidance that they put out. With that in mind.
Bull crap.
Yeah.
Absolute bull
so
crap.
At that point, why not just lean into the perception that you have all this money and you have all this recruiting prowess? If you're Jimbo Fisher, why not just kind of tweet out something like, cry me a river, go Ags, and just kind of lean into it a little bit. Plus, at the end of the day, no one's buying Jimbo Fisher's whole thing of, oh, we're getting players the same way we always have.
At 8-4, Texas A&M.
Right, 8-4 with the grayest landscape in all of college football.
College Station is the utopia.
Right, yeah.
Beautiful.
This guy is making it sound like College Station is Aruba or something, and they're just getting players because they want to come to College Station, and they were just coming off a national title or something. No, you're not beating Nick Saban. You're not beating Georgia right after a natty by simply telling people, hey, come play at College Station. So everyone knows what's going on, and I'm not here to say that it's right or wrong, but just kind of, you lose your credibility, just lean into it. I think the recruits would think it's a little cool too. So just the way Jimbo's handled this whole thing, it's kind of corny, kind of cringy. Just lean into it, in my opinion.
Hey, Justin, you're a 247 guy. You're an extraordinaire. You talk to kids all over the country. You hear stories like that?
Oh yeah, it's kids know what other kids are getting. They basically have an idea of, and that's kind of why it's dangerous for some of these schools to let some of their offers get out there. Like you look at Miami with Life Wallet and the basketball player they landed for $400,000. Like the kids start to figure out what other kids are valued at, and suddenly they're like, okay, can I get a little bit of that? So at the end of the day, I guess you don't want numbers getting public, but there's not necessarily a negative to kind of embracing that you're an NIL school, because the kids are going to know from one another anyway. So now you're just over here doing this dog and pony show in front of cameras, doing 10-minute pressers, lying about something you know is not true.
Well, I think there's, Nick's very rarely been called out like that, and Jimbo claims Nick called him and he didn't call him back. Called several coaches this week to kind of get the backdrop and the backstory about their relationship, and it's very interesting to say the least. There's been
what's the feedback?
The feedback is not an easy guy to work for, I think, as we know. I mean, he's very hard charging, very demanding. I think they butted heads several times, and I think God, without divulging too much, Nick doesn't like to finish second. And, on the recruiting trail, you can't badmouth Nick Saban, can't talk about Alabama, or else there's this this word put out on you. Let me use that term. And so really Jimbo's press conference, what he said to me was, when you look at Nick's reputation and the respect or fear, whatever you want to call it, that other coaches have for him, what Jimbo said to me, calling Nick a narcissist, and asked those that worked for him, and all those things, were very interesting, very eye-opening. For those that don't know on the outside, that he's a very demanding person and stuff like that. So definitely Jimbo had a message to send. And when he held that press conference, what was that message that he was sending? I'm just curious, Jason. What was Jimbo telling people?
I think that his donor base at Texas A&M and his coaching staff and where they believe the trajectory of this whole NIL era and transfer portal era is going has given him the confidence to say, we don't give a damn about Alabama. They were able to beat him on the field. He's the first former coach of Nick Saban's to beat Nick Saban, if I'm correct, this past season at home.
You are correct.
It was a last-minute field goal that beat Nick Saban, and I think that, on top of the oil money that is known to matriculate all through the bowels of Texas, they feel that they compete with anybody in the country, as evidenced in the class that they have now gotten, one of the all-time greatest classes. This isn't just the best class of 2022. This is one of the all-time greatest classes ever and this is after following an 8-4 season. So I think that confidence, they said, hey, Jimbo, we got your back. Go out there, and to hell with that SOB. And that's what you got in that press conference. I think that it was a little bit overstepping, in my opinion, but that's what he wanted to do. They wanted to draw a line in the sand and say that they're here to compete for SEC championships and beyond.
I agree with you. It was overstepping, and as as we all know that Nick's a different breed, and Jimbo, this new era that we're entering, is an extremely interesting era. How you recruit players has completely changed, and really what the focus of these young men are has let's just be honest, has changed. But then prime Deion Sanders weighs in because he was called out directly. Do we have that tweet up there? Deion responded to Nick's comments about Jackson State, and it was very interesting because he said, Coach Saban wasn't talking to me. Coach Saban was talking to Jimbo Fisher. He was talking to his boosters. He was trying to get money. Very, very interesting to me. And then he also said, you best believe that I will address that lie, in parentheses, that Coach Saban told, whatever, tomorrow. I'll address it tomorrow. I was awakened by my son, and that sent me the article stating that, quote, we paid, and Travis Hunter is $1 million to play at, his hashtag at school, and it was people don't have to pay our people to play with our people. What do you make of that, Justin?
Yeah, I think Coach Sanders took offense to maybe the preconceived notion that the only reason someone would want to play for an HBCU in this era would be NIL. And we're seeing college basketball players go to HBCUs. We're seeing football players go there. Travis Hunter's not the only one. So I guess why can't players go play for HBCUs? Why can't, in this era where NFL GMs and scouts can find you anywhere, what if some people want to go play in an HBCU for genuine reasons and don't need to be overpaid by $1 million like Coach Saban is suggesting? So I don't know exactly what happened here with Travis Hunter. Maybe that is what happened. But what Coach Prime is kind of saying there is, how dare you kind of imply the only reason someone wanted to play at an HBCU is because you think we paid him a ton of money.
Do we have Travis Hunter's tweet up there to show? Travis Hunter had an interesting tweet.
Up there.
He said, I got $1 million, but my mom's still staying in a 3-bedroom house with 5 kids. So he's kind of saying that $1 million did not happen. Otherwise, his mom would be out.
Right?
Yep.
So then the Detroit Economic Forum had this past week had a summit, and they cornered Mel Tucker to ask Mel about his comments about Jimbo and Saban. And, Mel, he's worked for Nick. He's not, doesn't want to get involved in that spat. He thinks NIL is good overall, but I think that kind of talk regarding NIL really, sheds a negative light on it. And, NIL had typical. I think it was very interesting what he said, right? When he said, I try to take the judgment out of it. I really do, Tucker said via Tony Garcia on Twitter. I believe in neutral thinking. I'm not going to get too high or too low. It's not right or wrong, not good or bad. It just is what it is. You get the 1 or a 0. You get a W or an L. It's binary. That's what he's selling. Or that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
So it's about as neutral as a statement as you can make. That's basically saying Mel Tucker, don't get me involved. We don't want to get involved. He also had another quote that he gave to Tony Garcia. Got that up there. Is Mel Tucker, if you could make one change across college football, what would that be? And Coach said, I'd like them to figure out what holding is. That got a big laugh, of course. But Mel was serious. What is holding? Which is a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But, Back to this NIL. I want to bring on, an NIL expert, NIL lawyer, Mike Stein, who joins Inside the Locker Room. Mike, how are you today? Great to have you on set.
Thank you, Brian. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy to discuss this topic. Jason, how are you? Good to see you, man.
Doing phenomenal. How you doing, Mike?
Thank you.
Thank you. What do you make of all this, Mike? Tell us these comments. What you heard.
Sure.
And then talk to us a little about what are the rules of engagement?
Sure. I found the comments to be explosive. I found them to be quite something. If you break down what Nick Saban said first, what Nick Saban basically said is you have broken the rules on NIL and to Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M, that all of your players were induced to come to this school. That is he's alleging a major NCAA violation, the biggest that you can get when it comes to NIL, right? Through all, and it's not there's some hard, fast rules, but basically as it relates to the, potential student athletes, the rule is NIL cannot be tied to inducement or contingent upon them enrolling in a certain school, right? So what Nick Saban said was, you have violated this rule, and every single player, every single recruit that you had, you bought, i.e., you induced to come to this school. That's as egregious as it gets. And so I find from a perspective of wrongdoing, I see that he's accused him of the worst. So obviously Jimbo comes back and fires back. And what does Jimbo do? Accuses Nick of impropriety in the past, right? So again, now you have another coach accusing the coach of NCAA violations. If I were the NCAA, I would haul both of these guys in and say, what information do you have, right? Ask Jimbo Fisher flat out said, we know what he's done in the past, right? He's a bad dude. He's done some things that are not right. He came right out and said it, right? If I were the NCAA office, I would want an explanation on what information that he has. So I don't like that Jimbo Fisher exposed himself to scrutiny about what he may know about Nick Saban in the past. And so I think that his response was not good. I don't think that he should have done that. As from a legal perspective, I think that he shot back and essentially put himself in the line of fire as well. And so I think from a global standpoint, it's not good for anyone. But you have two coaches that have really accused each other of some serious wrongdoing. And you also have Jimbo going on the record and saying, I've got nothing to do with NIL, right? Don't know anything about it. So that really better be the case. When you peel back the onion or when these things shake out a couple years from now, he really better not have been involved in any way, because he went on the record.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this. Tell us the rules and the law, because a lot of it's murky, right? When you say he shouldn't be involved or not involved,
right,
can somebody within the university this deal with a collective or whatever you call them, a donor? What are the rules exactly so we can better understand?
So what we're dealing with in this, and what Nick accused Jimbo of, is dealing with prospective student athletes, right? So pre-enrollment, okay? So name, image, and likeness, the interim policy, and the policy that Michigan State and University of Michigan have adopted is it mirrors the NCAA interim policy on name, image, and likeness. There used to be a prohibition on student athletes receiving compensation for their name, image, and likeness, right? So what it doesn't allow, okay, is compensation contingent on enrollment at a particular university, i.e. an inducement to come to a university, right?
Fine.
It doesn't allow compensation for athletic performance or achievement, meaning I can't put in a contract you get $1,000 per touchdown, right? And three, the compensation has to be for actual work performed, quid pro quo, something for something, okay? Those are the three hard, fast prohibitions, right? Now, what does it allow for? It allows for an athlete to make money, commercialize their name, image, and likeness, and make money from it, right? Just like you can, Justin, just like you can, off social media engagement.
Oh, I'm signing sponsorship deals all day long.
Right.
People want me. I'm like,
right.
soap model, shampoo model.
Right. Yeah. So it allows them to, social media engagements, endorsement, advertise products, a myriad of things, that they can do. But what we're dealing with collectives, okay, are basically these entities that have been defined as boosters, because they kind of are, right? Set up to, in various ones, do various different things, right? Certain schools have a collective that's set up by, or I shouldn't say school, right? Affiliated with schools, because universities are supposed to have nothing to do with the collectives, right? Universities are not supposed to...
Go back, hold on. Universities are not supposed to get... So are you telling me that a university employee cannot have any contact with a collective or whatever they're called, an entity that's raising money for NIL?
So if you're... So you have to be very careful there, right? There's not a hard, fast answer to that.
Because I read the law, and it's murky, right?
Right,
it's a PSA on discouragement.
Right. Which is, in for good reason, right? If you have a university official involved, you have this appearance that the school has some sort of say over what that collective is going to give to the student athlete, right? And now you run into issues of pay for play, stuff like that. And you have a whole host of other issues that would be involved with having a university official involved, right, with employment issues, Title IX issues. If there was a contractual disagreement, to have a university official involved in there, you're really asking for a problem. And if you look at the NCAA rules, there's a reason why they prohibit university officials from having anything to do with an agent, a sports agent, right? University officials are not allowed to, on behalf of a college athlete, market their athletic performance to sports agents. So this is along the same lines, right? It doesn't jive with what the NCAA wanted with NIL, which is for the universities to. The universities cannot pay the players, we know that, but for them to be in. They're really not supposed to be involved, because...
What does that mean, they're not really supposed to be involved?
Well,
what is the hard, fast rule? I mean, I get it.
Well, here's the question I have. I get it. I'm with you, Brian, because this is the same... I want to question with you, Mike, because if what I'm hearing you say is that if a university facilitates any action by the collective with the prospective athlete, a signed athlete now, and there is any dispute with the athlete maybe not performing the task, when I've seen you need to tweet so many times, you need to come and do this appearance, whatever those things are. If there's any contractual issue, what I'm hearing you say is now the university has put themselves right in the line of fire because they have to enforce something.
That's correct. And then also, again, if it comes down to an investigation or there's an investigation involved, these are, and not to mention the ethical conflict of interest, right? I mean, what does a university official that represents the university understand? One, they're not a lawyer, so that they're not going to represent the student athlete as a lawyer. So what are they doing? They're representing as an agent. So if they're an agent under the MSU policy, for example, you have to be paid fair compensation. So what are you going to do? You're going to have a student athlete pay a university official that is also potentially a coach. I mean, it's to me to engage in anything like that is This is the first time I've ever heard of anything like that, right? To me, because it sounds preposterous that the university would throw themselves into it like that, right? And then we're going to be on a show.
Well, Mike, is that why? Yeah.
No, I'm asking. I'm asking generic
agent?
questions. I mean, I'm just saying in general. I want to understand, like, because we're getting conflicting reports, right, about that a university official can be involved in dealing with a group of donors, can negotiate contracts. And then we're also being told, no, they can't.
Right.
And say a rule's murky.
Yeah. Negotiate contracts to me is a no-go, right? There could conceivably be some discussion as a coach or university official would have with boosters, right? General, discussions. But the university is, if an official is starting to say, this player should get X, I want this player to get X. This is pay for play. And so there's certain things that clearly to me cross the line, right? Like if you want to have someone act as a liaison to some of the programs and make sure that, the compliance aspect is running appropriately or that their public image is appropriate, that's kind of a different story. But to have real involvement, the way that I have involvement in representing a player is
tell us your involvement. Give us an example of how you represented a player.
Right. So what I do is, as a lawyer, I handle two components. So one, I handle the legal aspect of it, the reporting, the drafting of the contracts, the negotiation of the contracts. But for my guys, for a select group of guys that I represent, I also actively go out there and seek name, image, and likeness opportunities, endorsement deals. And so, as you know, this is still, in Michigan, is still kind of a regional thing, right? We're still dealing with regional companies, businesses inside the state that are interested in working with the student athletes. And so I actively go out and seek opportunities for my guy, negotiate the contracts, figure out the terms of the contracts, and then get everything signed and submitted to the universities. And it's been quite lucrative, to start, and it's going to get even more lucrative.
So, Mike, let me ask you a question. If there is a school, they don't have anybody being a liaison to a collective saying these are my top 7 targets, right? Not doing anything that is them directing the collective to target certain players or give certain sums.
Okay.
However, that collective is indeed engaging in pay for play. They are coming to quid pro quo deals with student athletes while they're still in high school in order for them to play for a school. But nobody with the university is involved. Schools or collectives are simply looking at who's visiting the school, thinking, okay, these are important recruits, and on their own going ahead and paying money. How can the NCAA enforce anything in terms of punishing the schools in that regard?
That's a good question. What you may see is the punishment to the students, right? To the student athletes, which is what you're concerned with the most. You're right. I mean, theoretically, it's going to be hard to punish a university for activity that they had, no knowledge of, right? But that could come down on the student athlete, and you're talking about being ruled ineligible, and there are other things that can then happen with that. I think with that, with that collective, whereby that collective would no longer be able to have any affiliation, with the university, which is why I say that there is some interaction that a collective could conceivably have with the university, whereby if they wanted to know what was permitted or what wasn't permitted, or what way they're able to help out, what way they're not able to help out, right? So that type of dialogue I don't see as a problem. It's really with the pay for play, and the what you just referenced, I imagine is going to be an issue, right? It's going to be an issue, and that's why you hope that a lot of these guys hire people that are handling their NIL matters, but that are also attorneys, right? That's almost why I jumped into this, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry now says, oh, I want to manage, I can get you X, X, and X. Well, there's other components, right? There's handling the legality aspect. There's the compliance component. there's a contract negotiation, making sure everything's right, and that these players aren't signing terrible contracts.
Right.
So that is definitely going to be an issue. I mean, it's definitely going to be an issue, and we're going to have to see how the NCAA handles it. I think at this point, what they've indicated through that memo is that they're going to go after the most egregious cases right now. And some of that points me in the direction of, what happened with the unnamed quarterback, that signed 2 days later with Tennessee, right? You had.
I want to ask you about that real quick. So that whatever that dollar amount was, right?
Yeah.
How would they know to offer that dollar amount to that quarterback if they're not in consultation with the staff? And can they be in? This is a serious question.
Not about the money.
Can they be in consultation with the staff?
No, absolutely not.
So Tennessee can offer a quarterback $8 million for X amount of years, but in theory cannot be in negotiation with the staff getting directive.
Right. So the way that would have had to have gone down, right? Otherwise, it's a pay for play, or it's an inducement that the university is directly involved in, right? So the way that should have went, if it went down the right way, and I don't know how it went down.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Is that the collective would, here's what's interesting about that one is I don't agree with how that was rolled out. And basically what they tried to do, the way that attorney that drafted that contract is tried to use a loophole to say it wasn't an inducement, which is why I think they're going to have a problem, because you can't come right out and say, well, this really is, we structured this to not look like an inducement, right? That's not keeping in the spirit of what's allowed, right? It's basically saying, well, because we worded it this way, it's not an inducement, right? That doesn't pass the smell test that it actually was an inducement. And so I think that I think that's one of the ones that the NCAA is going to take a hard look at, right? Because he signed 2 days later with Tennessee, right? But the way that should have went down is he should have signed with the university.
Committed
with the university, and then they can roll that out, that they have a deal, right? But that got rolled out prior to him, stating that it had nothing to do with him going to the university. The university name isn't mentioned in the contract, right? But then 2 days later, he signs with Tennessee. Either way you want to look at it, the university would never have been allowed to say, I want you to give him X, and I want you to give him $8 million a year. If they did, they've breached the rule of being involved in the name, image, and likeness.
Right. Very, very interesting. Show that clip about the Texas NIL. You got that up there? High school? So Texas law now will consider legislation that would allow Texas high school athletes to earn NIL compensation. I believe Florida and California allow that as well.
Well, I think there was a lawsuit in Florida.
There's actually nine states
that are allowing it. And what kind of competitive advantage does that give these states?
Man, I mean, it almost acts also as a workaround to the inducement, right? I mean, it just gives people the opportunity to get involved on the endorsement end with these young athletes even earlier. I don't really have a problem with it. I think that if somebody wants to pay you money to endorse their product, you should be able to do it, right? We have child actors. These guys are working their tails off. They deserve it. They don't. I didn't play college football. I didn't play college athletics, but these guys, they lead different lives than we do, right? They have, their days are filled with so much commitments that they should be able to cash in when their stock is high. And so I have no problem with allowing high school kids to make money off their name, image, and likeness.
Where are we going from here?
Man,
this is the Wild West right now.
Yeah, it really is. In the sky is the limit. Okay, as you can see.
Is that good or bad?
That's a question. That's a question that I leave more to you guys to answer.
I host a podcast.
My job as somebody that goes out and procures deals for my clients is to make them as much money as I possibly can.
Sure.
Right. That's my fiduciary, and I take it. I take it very seriously, right, as you should. And what happens thereafter, I kind of, there's going to be some some additional stuff that happens. There's going to be some locker room envy. There's going to be some issues that coaches have to deal with when some of their players may be making more than their assistant coaches, right? There's time commitments that are involved with these activities. You know, my athletes have to, you know, they have obligations. They have social media posts they have to do. They have appearances they have to do. So I think that there is going to be some consequences to this, right? There's going to be some stuff that is going to have to be worked out. But from my perspective, you know, the sky's the limit, as we're seeing from some of the contracts that we're seeing right now. You know, 6-figure contracts, 7-figure contracts. These are massive deals. I mean, you have deals with Gatorade, and Steph Curry has signed someone, and so you're only going to see more of these. You know, we live in a, not to wax all political, but we kind of live in the world of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, right?
We all do.
Right.
That's why we're in crypto.
Right. Where everybody has that. Okay. And so now,
that's for you, David Sala.
You know, now you have the idea.
Oh yeah.
You know, so now you have this situation where everybody, they want to be a part of the action, and everyone wants to say, you know, I had Dylan Tatum show up at my bar mitzvah, you know what I mean, or I had all 5, you know, offensive linemen show up at my Christmas party, you know, or stuff like this, which is very cool, which you can now do, and so I think that it's wide open. You know, you've got guys like myself that are actually going out there and really trying to press the envelope and try to connect these kids with local or regional brands and try to make something happen. So I think that it's a great opportunity, and it is going to rule college football. Okay, it already has, right? We've already seen
it's taken over.
It's taken over, and we can see. You'll be able to see in 2023 with the recruiting class and the rankings, right? Even though they're not supposed to be inducements, we're going to see the changing landscape, right? You got you know these University of Kentucky's, Vanderbilt's, some of these schools that were never recruiting. You know, now Vanderbilt has more recruits signed for 2023
they got
than
a lot
Alabama
of money
does
over there now.
So
a lot of the great law school, a lot of smart kids.
So, you know, I think that you're going to see some big deals. I think you're also going to see some things happen where guys are leaving or guys are concerned, you know, guys, we already saw it with a player from FSU that basically, you know, sat out, or so to speak. He's
free agency. Right,
he sat out, and then with the transfer portal too. I mean, this is, you know, money talks, right? And so if anyone thinks that this is not part of a college kid's decision, is lying to themselves. And when I say that it's a part of it, you know, we live in an age when your position coach may not be there when after 1 or 2 years of you being there, your coach may not be there, right? So there's not as much devotion to the colors anymore, right? When coaches are leaving at the drop of a dime, you know, you've got to worry about yourself, and so the NIL compensation that you can make is going to be a very big factor for these kids. It's here to stay, and based on the rulings of the Supreme Court, it's going to be very hard to curtail a lot of this activity.
Yeah, right. You know? I mean, the Supreme Court pretty much neutered the NCAA. Wouldn't you agree?
Right. No, yeah. they did. You know, they did, and so it's. People say, well, they're going to do something's going to happen. They're going to do something, but based on that ruling, you know, this is really it's here to stay. You know, we may see some, you know, we may see some crackdowns here or there on some egregious activity, but you know,
they got 3 enforcement officers. They've cut staff and by 20 some. I mean, we're entering the Wild West phase.
Sources tell me that those 3 enforcement officers were at a high school this week, and they were threatening prospective high-level recruits that they're going to be coming and interviewing your schools and asking questions about when you did enter or were promised these NIL deals. Those 3 guys you're talking about, they're on the loose right now.
Right.
Now, I don't know what their budget is. I don't know what their power is. Doesn't sound like they have much power.
That I can confirm. That I can confirm. So I appreciate. Yes, Jason, you are correct. Let's get to that Jackson Kohler signing an NIL representation deal. I think that was a little bit misstated.
Right.
Justin, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so yesterday Forbes reported with an original headline of, I think, that Jackson Kohler had signed some six-figure NIL deal, and then I went ahead and talked to his agent, Justin Brantley, an hour after that broke, and we sat down and had a Zoom call. Really what had happened here is, as the tweet you see on the screen, Jackson signed with Helium Sports Entertainment and Marketing for NIL representation. So the deal is based on a projection that Kohler will be worth six figures through Helium's branding efforts. It is not any sort of deal where Kohler got six figures. So
he's not making any money.
Correct. He could theoretically make $0 out of this, or he could exceed $100,000 out of it. It just depends how his career goes, what his value is, what kind of brands try to sign him, and what that value is. So, I guess an excerpt from that article that I wrote here was, it kind of sheds light on who Justin Brantley is and kind of what kind of agent Kohler is represented by here. He says, what we're building here is a marathon, not a sprint. At the end of the day, Jackson wants to play in the NBA. My job and my goal is to make sure I don't devalue his brand before his NBA opportunity comes. My goal is to accentuate and build his brand so someone can look at him and say, he's an X amount more valuable because of the work Helium did, versus a brand coming and saying he's oversaturated and devalued by all sorts of low market brands associating with him. So there's a lot of brand building and brand protection that we're going to focus on. So basically, Brantley just wanted to go ahead and clarify that this is not some cash grab operation where they're just signing Kohler up with all sorts of different brands trying to hit the six-figure mark. They're going to make sure that he is only aligning with reputable companies, big companies, and I think it's good for Michigan State fans to see that one of their athletes that should be a marquee athlete as soon as this year is kind of going to be steered correctly here in the NIL game. And but I just wanted to clarify, this is an NIL representation deal. So this would be like somebody signing with Mike Stein here, to make sure that they're navigating the circuit in a clear fashion, not an NIL deal.
So you're telling me that the NIL that we know that's being formed,
right,
he can not partake in that.
So since he has signed his letter of intent, he can go ahead and sign any sort of deals as long as the school does not arrange it for them. And we know Tom Izzo is not going to be breaking any rules and doing that.
No, but can he solve with multiple collectives, or for lack of a better term?
Yeah, he can go and sign with anybody. So like Caleb Williams, when he committed to USC, well, actually when he signed with USC out of the portal, immediately after he signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Beats. So that's legal. But you can't do anything like that until the day you sign on the dotted line. For college football players, that is mid-December. Anything happening before that is what Mike Stein was saying here, where then it's an inducement. You cannot sign with any collective, with any sort of company until mid-December if you're a football player and you've signed on the dotted line. After that, someone like Jackson Kohler.
Justin, I think.
Yes.
I think what Brian is asking, though, since he signed with the company, like since I signed with Mike Stein,
right?
Can I also sign a deal from somewhere that Mike Stein does not bring?
So
something that Mike Stein doesn't bring to me.
So in this case, actually, Mike Stein, his job would be to go ahead and secure those deals and bring them on the table for Jackson. So yes, he is, Justin Brantley here is the agent that's job is to go out and find these deals for Jackson to sign.
Jason, the way I'd answer your question is to say that it would depend on what their arrangement is, right? If they have an exclusive agreement or not, or is he the only one doing that, or is if for example I were to bring him a deal, right? Is he working exclusive? But yeah, listen, I mean,
if you were to bring him a deal, can he sign with you or no?
It would all depend on what type of arrangement he has with, but the way I see this is, Mr. Brantley is just his agent who's saying, listen, I'm going to build a brand with him. It could be worth six figures, right? Perhaps what they're thinking is that they're going to do a branding, a clothing brand themselves, and that if they do that and it's well, he's going to have a six-figure deal because he owns, his client owns that brand. But yeah, what he's basically saying is, I'm an agent. I'm going to go out and try to find him some deals that are, that we believe fit with his ethics, which is exactly what I try to do, right?
Right.
You take your clients and you try to fit them with brands that are going to further them from a publicity standpoint and that align with their morals and their ethics. And so, I think that the way that it was written, when you peel back the onion a little bit,
That's
right,
what I was going to ask you.
Right.
Was the headline misleading?
yeah, of course it was. I mean,
All
of course it was. But listen, he's trying to, get some publicity
I
for
get
his
it.
client. So
I get it.
I like,
appreciate
I
that.
like that aspect of it.
And
Or-
I hope Jackson Kohler makes 7 digits.
Right.
How's that?
Right. Yeah.
I
yeah,
absolutely
of course,
do.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Totally, absolutely do. Mike, we're going to have you back on. Want to thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Listen, I
for your
really
insight.
appreciate you guys having me on. It's a pleasure. I'm a Spartan grad in law school as well, and so it's great to be on here. And next time, what I hope to discuss is more about Michigan State's involvement not Michigan State's involvement, but the MSU
Not
community.
Michigan State.
Not
Yes.
Michigan State's involvement, but the community and whether the collectives are going to get together, affiliated with Michigan State, and hopefully we can have a nice conversation on that.
All right. Well, there's a lot of folks working on something pretty big, so when they're ready to make light of that, it will be known. So,
Okay.
Mike Stein, NIL
Thank you, guys.
expert
Thanks,
attorney.
Jason.
Thank you for joining our show. We really appreciate you, Mike.
My
and,
pleasure.
Mike.
My
wish
pleasure.
you all the best. We're going to lean on you for future expertise.
You got it.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Stein, NIL expert, joining our show. Real quick before we let you go, we got a big official visit weekend here coming June 3rd. MSU set for a big official visit. And according to this graphic, we're going to let Justin explain this graphic because I see a lot of green. I don't really understand it. So go ahead, Justin.
So what you guys see on the screen here is a graphic that shows 2 data sets. One is the percentages that you see to the right of every bar graph. That percentage indicates how many of each school's official visit slots have been filled up or booked. So in Michigan State's case, you see 58.9% next to their bar graph. That means 58.9% of Michigan State's 56 allowed visit spots have been booked. So that, for one, indicates the amount of kids that want to come and see what Michigan State is selling. That is impressive in its own regard. However, the more impressive factor here is the size of the bar graphs. And that actually, as you can see on the axis at the
big
bottom.
size.
Yeah.
All I see is a big green bar graph, which to me tells us it's good.
Right. So here, Bud Davis, I don't know his formula, but Bud Davis has a cumulative recruiting talent metric at the bottom. And by his definition, Michigan State is bringing in more talent to their official visit season in June than any other school in the nation so far.
Wow. When have we ever seen that?
I have not.
That is absolutely phenomenal. I don't know what that
I'll
formula
tell you guys
is.
what. Yeah, it's
Tell
an
us.
incredible formula. Sources tell me that, of the 56 official visit spots, Michigan State has 80-plus players, none of them under a 4-star, trying to book those 56. Try to get a slot in one of those 56.
Wow.
And inquiring minds want to know this, that the coaches have been out on the road lately recruiting as it's been, contact period. Justin, you're very familiar with this.
Yep.
But right now, the overbearing, narrative that is coming back is that somehow recruits have forgotten, because there must be some negative recruiting, in my opinion, about Michigan State's recent success. There's a lot of reselling that is happening with the Michigan State staff about Michigan State being 11-2, about Mel Tucker, about them going from 2-5 to 11-2, and the culture that Michigan State has. It's a lot of short-term memory out there on the recruiting trail right now, and we want to make sure that recruits are all, they're getting back. Oh yeah, that's right. They did beat Michigan. They did beat Penn State. They did win their bowl game, the Peach Bowl, New Year's 6. There's a lot of things that people, and we know how people are, they have short memories. They have forgotten. Recruits have forgotten. Families have forgotten. We want to make sure that people know that. And as far as the arms race and facilities, Michigan State has broken ground. Stuff's coming out of the ground now. So they're going to be on par with everybody. So this official visit season is going to be very exciting. Justin, you're going to have your hands full, you and Corey.
Right. Yeah.
Sounds like people are scared. What do you think, Stray?
Yeah.
Oh, you know it.
Yeah.
Hey, sounds like they hear them footsteps. Tuck's coming. What do you think?
Yeah.
Tuck coming.
Yep. And I should clarify that we actually, I need to relook at the rules, but Michigan State might have up to 62 official visit slots. My understanding of the rule is you can carry up to 6 from the previous year if you have them unused. And Michigan State did not have even 50 official visits last year, so they definitely will carry over 6 from last year. And I am going to say they have 62 official visit slots, but I will relook at the rules and post that on the Shaw Lane VIP board if I am correct about that.
Thank you. We're gonna talk about that recruiting cap next week. You got something else, Jason? Sorry, I cut you off.
I was going to talk about that recruiting cash.
We're gonna get there next week. We're teasing them for next week. We're teasing them for next week. And next week's guest, we're gonna tease them. We'll tease them on Monday. We'll let them know Monday. But ladies and gentlemen, I am Brian Musalam, your co-host for Inside the Locker Room, along with my co-host, the Honorable Jason Strayhorn, special guest Justin Thin, who we believe is a rising star, going to be a future in the business. Thank you for joining us, Justin.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you. And Mike Stein, we appreciate all of your insight on NIL because these are uncharted waters and territories that all of us are trying to understand and grapple. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Inside the Locker Room. Thank you very much for joining us. God bless. Go green. Take care.
Good night.
He stumped him. He stumped him. He stumped him. Nice block. Wow. Great penetration. Surge through the middle of that. Michigan State first and goal.
I'm going to tell you what. You got some fantastic. This fucking is the wild.